Welcome, everyone. Today we're talking about Agentic AI, the next leap in creative operations. Not just generative AI, but AI that can plan, act, and collaborate with humans and actually get work done. We'll look at what this means for modern marketing teams and how leaders are using Agentic AI to scale creative production without scaling headcount. Today, I'm joined by Satej Saror, CEO of RocketTM. And Satej, it's great to be with you here today. We haven't done one of these in a while. It's good to be back in front of the camera with you.
Yeah, likewise, Cam. It's always a pleasure to do this, and a lot has changed since we last spoke, so this is perfect timing.
Definitely, definitely. So, what are we going to be talking about today? We mentioned agentic AI, but what does this mean in terms of creative operations and how we're thinking about the space going forward? Moving from a software first landscape to now being more in the realm of AI agents and robots and everything that's taken over the tech industry.
Yeah, no, it is a very exciting time to be alive and building software in this space. And because a lot has changed in how we are telling Rocket Team story, what customers are expecting from us, I thought this would be a good topic for us to discuss. And yeah, a few slides, a couple of resources for the folks who are joining, and others will get this over email. So let's dive right into it.
Awesome, sounds good.
Cool.
So I
So
know that like a lot of folks in the industry are thinking about AI, but I guess what does this mean across enterprise brands and agencies when this pressure for more AI keeps coming up?
yeah, I mean, for a lot of people, AI is in one of two camps. One is either they are scared of it, or their legal risk teams are not allowing them to use it, or they are saying AI at any cost, and no idea about where to use it. But having said that, a lot of people who talk to us, regardless of AI or not AI, have very concrete things that they are coming to us with. The obvious one, which will never go away, is that you always have more ideas than you have time to work on them, right? So especially these days with teams either staying the same or in many cases shrinking, all of that workload has to be managed with the same team. A lot of folks today aren't really coming to us with cost saving or any defensive measures. It's all about offense. They want to grow faster, they want to deal with competition. So that is something that's come up. And I would say on the whole, there is a balanced way of looking at AI. People are interested in using AI. They have figured out a few places where they want to use it. But commonly, when people are coming to us, it's one or more of these reasons that we hear from people why they want to talk to us about AI.
Definitely. And why don't you think it has to do necessarily with trying to reduce costs? You would think that would be a major motivator for folks, but it sounds like people are more interested in staying up with the competition. How can a smaller company compete with the bigger companies? How can the bigger companies stay ahead? And it's more about driving revenue than it is necessarily cutting costs. Like, why do you think that is?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why. It seems obvious that the first thing that you want to go after is cost reduction, but you can't keep reducing cost every year. You can keep
Right.
growing the business, you can keep improving the operations, you can keep giving a better experience to your customers. So maybe everyone has realized that let's not go for something very short term and something that affects their future projects that they are doing. So I think it's good. People are not really thinking of, hey, this one time I want to let go of several team members, I want to cut my agency or any of those things. They are thinking of futuristic investments.
Yeah, and I think that there's a human element to it too, and I think you touched on it right there. We can't just keep cutting people forever, and have AI running our companies and everything. So how do we maintain that human element, keep people involved and part of the organization, for that organic human spark, while incorporating AI to then supercharge organizations as opposed to trying to maintain the status quo and replacing people with AI. So yeah, definitely agree. Um,
Yeah, and
you
hopefully
know,
we answer some of those questions as we move ahead. But the combination of people and tech is really where the answer is. And yeah, so today this is what we are going to cover. There's going to be a lot of jargon, no real explanation of how people can use it, and hopefully people go back with a PhD in AI. How does that sound, Cam?
Oh, sounds good. I mean, especially, AI can feel chaotic and there's a lot going on, a lot of jargon, as you mentioned. So, yeah, let's definitely try to parse through and make sense of it.
Yeah, no, I was kidding. Today we'll just do three broad things. So first is we'll definitely want to dive into some of the jargon, because without knowing some of these things, it's a little hard to navigate through this landscape. There's a lot of snake oil out there. So just helping people understand that. And then within our world of creative operations, we want to give some examples of agentic AI. And finally, if there are some people in the audience who believe that they want to create a change, then how do we equip them to have those conversations internally? That's what we'll cover. So to begin with a topic very close to our heart, which is traditional software, point and click with a mouse, mobile apps, whatever. We've been doing that for the last 10 years. We feel passionately about it as software makers, but there are real challenges with traditional software that we face, both as builders of software and on the other side for our users. So the common challenge with software is that everything that an end user has to do has to be an experience that a product manager has to design, a designer has to make UI components out of it, a developer has to code it, and then it goes to an end user. And this is only 5% of the problem. 95% of the problem is somebody has to evaluate your software, somebody has to learn it, and then on an ongoing basis, they have to use it. Only then you get a lot of value, right? And the worst part is that that feature is not really human intuitive, it's not human centric, it's very tech focused. Like it is drop downs and buttons and the complex menus and so on. No matter how easy we try to make it, the task itself is very complex. And if you have to give people complete control to do that task, you have to expose the complexity to people. That's the typical problem with traditional software. And in our world, creative operations is not just about make a design, you just think about it and a design gets done. There are so many steps in the middle: naming files, finding assets, doing layouts, making versions of assets. Hundreds of big and small steps are there, and you would have UI for every one of those that people have to learn, adopt, and so on. So that's the starting point. That's the world where we have always lived, and that world is no longer okay.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I go on the road and there's almost this cognitive dissonance when I talk to folks because they see a slide like this and there's so many different moving parts and pieces to their creative process. But when it comes to actual change management and taking on AI that can clean up this spaghetti of different disparate tools and tasks and teams, there's hesitancy, and so there's a desire to kind of clean up this creative process, but at the same time, there's still some reluctancy towards jumping in and really diving in the deep end in terms of AI. And so it'll be interesting to see because we've already seen with some of these companies that were early adopters in terms of AI and automation, the immediate success that it's had. So I think as more and more teams become more comfortable and realize not only is this a real pain point for us, but we can leverage AI and not be afraid of it, to really supercharge our creative engine. I think that'll go a long way towards creating further separation with those companies that choose to lean into AI.
Yeah, and when people think of AI, the first thing they think of generative AI. So before we get into some of the challenges with that, let's at least understand what it is. So generative AI is very complex. It looks very simple when we use it. It's just a chat box. You type something, you get an answer. The way it works is that what is underneath that is what is called an LLM, a large language model. What it is doing, almost think of it like Google search. You have all of these bots of theirs which are going and crawling different sources, almost exactly like what a Google search would do. And Google search, by the way, is also a chat box. You just don't talk back and forth with it. You just ask it a question and it returns to you a link that you could click. What is happening instead here is that instead of having links to different websites, almost like doing a search like Google search, what you're getting is an answer. So, what is happening is as you have read through all of these different sources, transcripts from YouTube videos, Reddit posts, and so on, the LLM is a large language model. So it is understanding the words within that, grouping and clustering them. And from there, it is generating a response. So when you ask it a question, for example, does this copy look okay for a Gen Z audience? It is trying to see patterns of text in words that other people have written, which is why there is a lot of questions around copyright, because an LLM isn't actually generating anything. It has understood all of the content of this world as clusters of words. So, like what you see over here, the cat sat on the, it is generating word by word. And based on the question and some of its understanding of the words, it is now looking at the probability of the next word that has to come and it generates that, right? That's why when you type something in a chat GPT, Gemini, Claude, Meta AI, wherever, you would see the response also comes word by word like this. So there is no website or article that it is returning. Instead, it is generating each of that word by word, right? And so that is now something that you can imagine why you are getting hallucinations, why every time you type you get a different answer, because it's all based on probabilities. There's no real answer that it is seeking and returning to you like a Google search. On the fly it is trying to figure out what's the best response that I could generate for it.
Yeah, and I think part of what's cool, but also some of the drawback about Gen AI is that it almost creates an archetype of whatever you're looking for. So if you tell it to generate, a cup, for example, it'll skim through and it has, thousands, millions, billions of images of cups, and it tries to create, the perfect cup, which it is a perfect cup, but it's also not, personalized, and it's not, it's hard to kind of, make it, uh, unique to an individual. If you're trying to sell to a specific group, you might be able to create that archetypical cup, but it's hard to personalize it, keep it on brand, and all the necessities that companies need when they're trying to go to market and they're trying to sell real life products. There's an authenticity that kind of lacks when you kind of go to that archetypical realm.
Exactly, Cam. And so that's certainly one of the biggest problems that you would face when, if you are relying purely on generative AI, that I type something, I get back copy or translations or imagery or entire assets altogether. The worry that, hey, this looks AI generated, this doesn't look like my brand, and so on. The other challenge, of course, generative AI is magical. What we are getting is this unbelievable futuristic technology. But because it was built for languages and you are trying to retrofit it to, for example, take a Photoshop file and templatize it, or take my design, resize it, those kinds of domain specific things which it cannot do, you make it do that, it won't really work. And you would get different answers every time. Every time you want to touch it, feel it, you see a response. But if you have to change it, it's another prompt. And what happens, because it's not a deterministic system, it's a probabilistic system. Every time it might go through a different path and generate something a little bit different. You might have the perfect looking asset and you might say, hey, just move this button a little bit. It might end up changing your logo, right? So no blame on generative AI. It is magical technology, but there are some of these challenges, right? So like you outlined, great tech, good for many use cases, but when it comes to real production work, there are some challenges. So I want to call out now the emergence of agentic AI, where it is taking everything that the goodness of what a large language model has to do things that it is good at, which is understanding human intent, understanding in general terms inputs that people have given, understanding patterns between different things. So now how do you combine that and get something that solves the challenges with generative AI? So have you heard of agentic AI? Is this something that you hear from customers, Can?
Well, so I mean, agentic AI has been, really the buzz term for most of 2025. But it really depends upon, the group that I'm talking to. If I'm talking to a more technical audience, yes, they've heard of Gen AI. But especially as I talk to, these creative folks, there's still a little bit of ambiguity around exactly, what agentic AI is, how is it different from Gen AI, and there's still kind of this blanket of AI, all AI, is Gen AI. And there's, lacking a little bit of that knowledge around, well, how is, Gen AI different from automation, from machine learning, from agentic AI? And, there's a lot in those details that really separate out, AI that can really solve business problems as opposed to AI that, like you said, can do magical things, but can't necessarily work for you know scaling revenue per se.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why I thought it's important to dive into some of the foundational elements of this thing. So this looks like a lot of moving parts, and it is. But let me explain what's happening here. The agentic workflow starts almost exactly like the generative AI flow, a chat box or Slack or wherever else your conversation is starting. You would give whatever your query is to this agentic AI workflow. It could be your assets, fonts, Photoshop files, any creative brief of yours, whatever it is you are trying to do, right? It could be that, hey, take this design, make versions out of it, or take this entire creative brief and take my past designs and make all of these, whatever it might be. Let's say you've given that. Any type of input, once it comes in, there is the planning phase of an agentic AI workflow. What happens here is that an LLM that has been tuned with certain kinds of prompts that it can understand and react to, and certain workflows that it is able to handle, it gets that and it maps to whichever one of the closest workflow that it is able to handle. That workflow is broken down into many different steps. That is the action execution part. Those steps are nothing but multiple agents who are in some ways very dumb, but what I mean, a better word is maybe specialized. They
Yes.
have all the power of an LLM, but they are told to do only one specific thing. What is that specific thing? This is called tool use, where traditional software is exposing bits and pieces of what they are capable of doing, their features, to these agents and saying, hey, you are my, let's say, Photoshop import agent. You are my file naming agent. You are my search agent, and so on. And the only thing they're doing is when they get an input from the planner, they take that and send it to the software. And the software is executing that. Once it executes, it gives back the response to that agent, who then hands it back to the planner, who's putting all of it together. And the traditional software is everything that we spoke about before, whether it is the approval workflows or designing asset search and all of those things. They also have access to memory. This could be all of your assets that are stored, your past feedback that you've given, anything else that is your company's and your brand's information, or it could be stuff coming from the internet. It's accessing that. And then it is giving it back to the main supervisor agent, who puts all of these responses together once the workflow across different agents has been executed. Then it goes to what is called the evaluation phase. This is where another set of agent, one or multiple agents, are checking the output to see if it did the right thing across different agents. This is also a place where, depending on the kind of workflow, you could have experts in the loop coming in. These are people either from the customer side or from the software provider side, who are doing another level of evaluation. And that is again used to feedback into the memory, that is again using the software parts of it. And then the output goes back to users. Depending on what the input was, the output could be a yes or no, it could be a number, it could be a document, assets, whatever it might be. And depending on that kind of an output, you might give the ability to the end users to go and refine that, not just as a prompt, but within the software, using it and making changes, right? So for an end user, the experience could be as simple as dropping a bunch of files, going and getting your coffee, and by the time you're back, the whole thing is done. 15, 20, how many ever steps have been executed, things have been checked by software, past data, and people, and you would get the final answer. And if you want to take over and make any changes, you have ultimate creative control, right? So I also have an example from the creative side, specifically what Rocketium has built in one of these flows. But any thoughts so far? How does this sound to you?
Well, yeah, it almost sounds like an organizational structure in some sense, like where you would give a brief to, say, an account manager. That account manager would then commission that to somebody who's responsible for ideation, who's a specialist in ideation and who like only does ideation. And so from there, giving it to a production team member who only specializes in production. From there, giving it to a team member who only specializes in checking for brand governance and making sure that all your brand guidelines are intact. And it almost seems like you know AI working in place of people, but they are super hyper focused and specialized on a specific tasks. And because it's AI, you can create any infinite number of these different AI agents. So you can come up with a really strong personalized team where traditional teams, people have to work more as generalists, and they have to focus on multiple different things. Their attention might be drawn in multiple different directions. But these AI agents can execute a specific task autonomously, and then report back to the account manager agent, if you will, who's managing the entire project.
Exactly. And for a general purpose task, also an agentic AI workflow could be very helpful. But once you realize that in your day to day operations, there are steps of your task which are very clearly something that you can define and say, hey, here are the steps to it. And when you do that, you are able to build a workflow that can keep executing so that you, as a person who's creative, who's got a family, who has to, take care of so many different things, you don't want to sit and do repetitive work, especially just going to some software, learning it, and 15 clicks to get something done, right? You are now giving it to AI agents to go and execute that on your behalf, right? So that's where you get a lot of leverage for your time, a lot of mundane repetitive activities you're able to automate. So like just take this example of things on the creative side, right? So what we are showing here is a brief that typically goes in where you have your design is already finalized, you have all the different copy, the different assets, all of that is ready. You just need somebody to use a Photoshop, Figma, Illustrator, Adobe After Effects to make all the different versions of it. So here what would happen is you would dump that into Rocketium. The supervisor agent would then go and come up with a plan and say that, oh, you've asked for translation, or you've asked for resizing, you've asked for something else. Oh, this one you haven't asked for. So it will figure out which agents have to be given these tasks. Those agents are individually going and using parts of Rocketium software one by one in sequence, right? Somebody delayers your Photoshop file, somebody makes all the versions, somebody resizes it, then automatically checking for A, the assets being created against your brief, B, checking against your brand guidelines and so on. And also our team of experts, which I'll get into that in a little more detail, but our experts also looking at it, making sure that wherever something was low confidence, that AI said, hey, I need you to look at it. An agent is flagging that to an expert who's looking at it, making tweaks in Rocketeer. After which, our design experience and collaboration experiences available to our end users, sometimes in a matter of minutes, sometimes 4 or 5 hours. They would get all of these assets that they are able to tweak, right? So this entire workflow is happening autonomously. 10, 50, 20 steps of that are getting automated throughout, right? And so this is just one example, but there are more such workflows. The flow of the process is more or less the same. It will have these steps that come up with a plan, execute it using software, evaluate if that execution was okay, and then hand it over to the person who's the ultimate authority on whether it is okay or not.
Yeah, and actually, one thing that strikes me in this entire workflow is really the humans in the loop. So you know, can you kind of dive into those humans in the loop and that aspect of it? Like what is their ultimate goal? Is it to do the production work? Is it to train the model? Like what is their role, and how does their role evolve over time per se?
Yeah, so today, the reason we have experts in the loop is a lot of this stuff is very new. Our customers are new to this and so on. And we don't want them to use something that purely 100% AI is doing. And again, remember that this is not generative AI taking your inputs and spitting out something general purpose. It is still executing using Rocketium software. But at least during onboarding, we make sure that our AI experts, and I have logos of some of the companies where our team has worked, but these are a mix of AI product managers, developers, UI designers, graphic designers, motion graphics experts who are looking at the inputs, making sure everything is okay. And if it is not, as they make changes, it is feeding back into the system. Different folks might upload files that cannot be understood for whatever reason. They are using some internal lingo that we don't know about. But once that context is there, and this is where having real people to collaborate with you and say that, hey, when you said OTI, what do you mean, right? And so giving that context, so for every customer being able to tweak the prompt of the planner or the different agents to say, hey, when you see oti it means this, and so on. Those are all the things that will allow that autonomous workflow to be more and more autonomous, and you don't require any manual intervention. So um, uh, in terms of the capabilities, there are some of those over here. Like I mentioned, there is a full-fledged design experience that designers and non-designers can use. There is search and organization of all of your past work, your assets that are being stored, brand guidelines. There is also a way to go through customer approval workflows, making something go through different stages, manually being able to review it. So all of that stuff exists, but you really want AI agents to execute that. All of these are great if you want to take over control, if you want to do things on your own, but really you want AI to execute that. And having a layer of people to make sure that whatever is made, whatever is being generated is on brand allows the future workflows to be that much more reliable.
So would you say that, the ultimate goal of these AI experts, these humans in the loop, is to, train the model so well that they're no longer needed? So as they go through and oversee the production of these different assets, make sure that, there's, minor tweaks, there's no hallucinations, the smarter that the AI gets, the more hands off they can be until ultimately it becomes a self-functioning, self-governing AI tool.
Exactly. That's exactly the point, because you do want human oversight and creativity and innovation involved, both from customer side as well as Rocket team side. But if the whole process is so manual that every request of yours somebody has to behind the scenes sit and execute that, that's you're not really getting leverage for the human potential that we have. So especially during onboarding and whenever a context changes, somebody's rebranding, so depending on the use case, you want to make sure that you are more and more standardizing that process so that it can be executed autonomously. And yeah, we do see this like an economy of scale. You see this economy of training in a way. The more of this stuff being executed on our platform, the more we understand what different prompts are coming from our customers, what different briefs look like, what their designs look like. You're able to automate a lot of these things.
So dare I say the AI gets smarter the more you train it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's really the idea. And yeah, I want to show you some of this stuff in action. So I'm going to share a different tab, and let's look at a quick video of how this works.
Dedicated workspaces designed to keep your brands, campaigns, and teams organized. Within each workspace, the Action Center allows you to oversee all your active campaigns at a glance. You have the option to delve further into projects or utilize our AI agents to gain deeper insights into your creative operations. Creating a campaign begins with a simple AI prompt. There's no need to worry about drafting complex creative briefs. Simply import your production brief, which includes important details about your campaign, such as strategy, creative direction, and data for creating variations. Download your production brief, then import it into Rocketium. Once your brief is uploaded, AI agents get to work drafting a creative brief, filling in all relevant details of your campaign, including necessary spreadsheet attachments. Moreover, your brand guidelines, once stored, are displayed with each new project, applying all typography, colors, and brand rules automatically to keep everything on brand. The AI also provides creative insights from your previous campaigns and repurposes successful strategies for your next campaign. You can also gain insights from competitor campaigns and market trends to help your brand stand out. Once approved, your entire campaign is ready in under 2 minutes, providing all the sizes and asset versions you need. When your creatives are ready, you can go to the editor to review all of them or make quick edits. If you need a specific creative size, simply ask the AI agents and they will generate it for you instantly. Want to edit copy? Simply select the variant you wish to edit, make the copy change, and watch it adapt to every other size in the creative set. You can even transform product photos without the need for designers or expensive photo shoots. Once your image is ready, you can simply remove the background and replace it on your creative. Need more assistance? Feel free to tag your team or our experts directly. They will be notified instantly and can jump in to help. Once you're satisfied with your designs, you can export everything in any format and file size required, including editable Photoshop files. Embrace the new way of creative work with Rocketium AI Studio.
So that was
Cool.
pretty neat. And I
So
think, one thing that stood out from that video for me was kind of a hybrid, a Frankenstein, if you will, of SaaS and AI agents, and how the software is still there, but it's no longer being used by individuals; it's being used by AI agents. And so that's just a totally revolutionary way of looking at how do we operate SaaS. Would you say, like, how would you where is SaaS headed? Like, how is software going to be changing? How do you foresee it changing in the next 5-10 years or
I
sooner?
mean, the grandfather of software, which is Microsoft, their CEO said that software is dead. So I don't want to dispute his claim, but I truly feel that this way of building software is the future, because this is really a very human experience, right? Somebody didn't really have to change the way they work, change the way they communicate with their team. The way they would do that, they are now communicating with software. And instead of their team spending a lot of time learning software, they are now getting the outcomes that they want. And they still have the control to dive in and make tweaks as you want, right? Today, some of us know what a carburetor is, and how to deal with radiators and whatever else, fan belts and so on. There was a time when everybody had to do it on their own, right? But today, cars are a lot more reliable. They keep running. You don't have to worry about the details of it, right? And self-driving cars just take another part of that equation out of the picture. But
Right.
whenever you want, you can take control back. Even in an automatic car, you have manual controls over gear and so on, right? So that's, I think, the best analogy that I can give, that you should have the control when you need it, but you shouldn't have to take control every single time, right? The software should do your bidding rather than it being the other way around.
Yep. Definitely. Definitely.
And I have one other thing to share, which is a quick resource that we put together. This is something that for a lot of folks who are already bought into using AI, whether agentic AI or generative AI, whether Rocketium, not Rocketium, doesn't matter. But if they are thinking about this is a resource, and we'll link this with our the webinar email, and also on our website. But even before bringing it in, before trying to convince somebody else, you have to be clear about why you are doing this, right? So this is a simple format where you can think about what we are facing as a challenge, what we have tried before. Here is the solution, like what outcomes we'll get out of it, and so on. So a little bit of structure will go a long way. You don't need more than a page of writing to really think about this. But I think this can be a very helpful resource for folks doing this. Yeah, I thought I'll share that with you.
Yeah, definitely. So one thing I also want to talk about, as well, is some of the worries that, or non-believers, some of the doubts that people will have, and you know, certain objections. I've heard plenty of times on the road. Is AI going to take over my role? Will quality drop? Will this disrupt my workflow? Yeah, I want to get your thoughts as to you know you know around these objections. Why we maybe shouldn't even be looking at it from this objectionary standpoint, but from a standpoint of how can we leverage this new tool? I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, and I think the starting point of this was that document. Whether you write it in a formal format or not, you need to be clear why you are bringing this change, because without that, status quo is always going to win. There is always going to be good reasons for not changing something, right? But if you know why you're doing it, that's always a good starting point. And there's always going to be rebuttals. There could be any amount of proof, and vendors like us would always tell you, hey, here are case studies, here are all of these good reasons why you should do it. But if it doesn't work for your organization, or you're not able to push it through because some people are resistant, then it's not going to work, right? Which is why we also recommend following a very crawl, walk, run kind of a workflow, which is pick a simple use case. Don't go too crazy. Don't try to do the most extreme, most elegant, automated way of operations. Pick a simple use case, something that 80% of the time, something that your team is doing. Start with that. See what is the current experience, the time taken, cost, all of those things. Try to automate that, see how that experience is. If that works, add another one, something that is a little more higher impact, and keep iterating that way. So that is always the best way versus saying that, oh, here are so many ideas that I have. Oh, Agentic AI is going to do so many things, and we want to bring in one solution that can do everything. We want to move every team to it. Generally, that does not work. And then always you want to keep finding more and more jobs to be done, things that annoy you, things that you feel, again, a similar sort of business case you can make for that, saying, if we don't do X, this is the impact of it. And that's why we want to bring in. And a partner like Rocket Team is always adding more things as capabilities to what we do. So that becomes a good way for you to work with a partner like us or whoever else to keep doing more things, right? The goal is, again, not like you were saying, make somebody lose their job or any of that. And again, our customers never come to us with that reason. It's always that, hey, we want to grow faster, we want to do less mundane work, we want to compete better in the marketplace, and so on. So I would say this becomes a good way to start off and dip your toes in the water and iteratively keep expanding.
Yeah, and I think the key, and you touched on it, really is clarity around what you're trying to achieve and the goals you're trying to accomplish. Let AI handle all the production and repetitive tasks, and let humans focus on ideation, storytelling, strategy, and the creativity. I think when teams see AI as an accelerator and not a replacement, that adoption will really, stick, and people will be much more willing to embrace AI as an assistant to their day-to-day lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And well said, Cam. And hopefully we are seeing the speed at which AI is moving. Every other day you have a world changing new model dropping, capabilities are being launched, benchmarks are being beaten. And frankly, it's a little hard for us software makers to keep track of it, let alone end customers who have to change their processes for it. So hopefully whoever is listening to this and motivated enough to change their process can move at the speed of AI.
Definitely. Well, Tej, this has been really enlightening. I want to thank you for your time on today's conversation. Lots to talk about around AI and agentic AI. So this won't be the last that our audience hears of this. We'll be, discussing it in depth from all different angles. How it can help different teams, how it can help, different industries, and how it's really revolutionizing the way that we look at creative. So thank you, Tej. It was a great conversation.
Thanks so much, Cam.